Hollywood love story ends in Murde, the Dominique Dunne tragedy. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. The story begins in Hollywood, place of dreams, place of broken hearts, and sometimes a place of nightmares. Dominique Ellen Dunne was born into that world on November 23, 1959. Her father, Dominique Dunne, was a celebrated writer and producer. Her mother, Ellen Griffin, was a ranching heiress. Her brothers, Griffin and Alex, would also find their way into Hollywood circles. Dominique was the youngest child, the one with wide, curious eyes and a love for performing. She grew up in Beverly Hills, a neighborhood of privilege, a neighborhood of power, but also a neighborhood where everyone carried secrets. From an early age, Dominique wanted to act. She wasn't just interested in fame. She wanted to tell stories. She wanted to disappear into characters. She wanted to leave something behind that mattered. Her family life wasn't always easy. Her parents' marriage fell apart. Divorce fractured the home. But Dominique pressed forward, chasing the spotlight. She attended private schools. She studied in Florence, Italy, for a time. She sharpened her craft at the University of Southern California. Her professors and peers noticed her talent. She had a natural presence. She didn't need to force it. She had it. By the late 1970s, she was in Los Angeles full-time, trying, auditioning, hoping, struggling, like thousands of other dreamers. But Dominique stood out. She had dark hair, expressive eyes, and a smile that could disarm anyone. She was ambitious but grounded. She was vulnerable but strong. She was not like the others. In 1979, she began landing television roles. Guest spots on shows like Fame, Hill Street Blues, and Chips. She wasn't a household name yet, but she was building, brick by brick. Then came 1981, the year that changed everything. The year she landed her breakout role. The film was Poltergeist, a horror movie, a story about a family haunted by dark forces inside their suburban home. Directed by Tobe Hooper, produced by Steven Spielberg. Dominique was cast as Dana Freeling, the teenage daughter. It wasn't the lead role, but it was significant. Her performance was subtle, layered, believable. She captured the audience with her authenticity. When Poltergeist hit theaters in June 1982, it became a massive success, one of the highest-grossing films of the year. Critics praised it, audiences loved it, and Dominique's name was suddenly on everyone's lips. She was just 22, a star on the rise. Her career seemed unstoppable, her future limitless. But success is a dangerous light. It attracts attention, it blinds, and sometimes it burns. Behind the glamour, Dominique struggled. Hollywood was demanding, the pressure was heavy, and the people you met weren't always who they seemed. It was during this period that she met him, John Thomas Sweeney, a man who would change everything. But before their paths crossed, Dominique was still glowing. She spent time with friends, fellow actors, writers. She had a vibrant social life. People were drawn to her warmth. She wasn't arrogant. She wasn't cruel. She was genuine. One friend later said, "You felt safe with Dominique. She saw you. She listened." But even her friends noticed something else. A shadow, a quiet sadness she carried at times, as if she knew that her path would not be as golden as others thought. Hollywood is a town of masks, of parties filled with laughter while hearts ache behind the scenes. Dominique navigated it all. She went to auditions. She took meetings. She wrote in journals. She dreamed of roles that would stretch her. She wanted to be remembered not just as the girl from Poltergeist, but as an actress of substance. By the summer of 1982, Dominique was close to achieving that. More film offers were coming. Television producers wanted her. Casting directors remembered her face. Everything was aligning. Her name was becoming currency in Hollywood. Her career, her fame, her destiny. Everything was in her grasp. But fate had other plans. It is here, at this moment of promise, that the story begins to shift. Because Hollywood can give, and Hollywood can take away, And for Dominique Dunne, what was about to be taken could never be returned. On a warm Los Angeles evening, she met John Sweeney, a handsome young chef, a man who seemed charming, confident, attentive. He worked at Ma Maison, a restaurant known for its high-profile clientele, actors, directors, power players. It was a place of status, and Sweeney thrived there. At first, Dominique was intrigued. He seemed different, grounded, not part of the Hollywood chaos. She thought he might be a safe escape, but appearances deceive, and what looked like love would soon reveal itself as obsession. This is the cruel twist of Dominique's story, that at the very height of her dreams, she stepped into the arms of the man who would destroy them, and Hollywood would never forget. When Dominique met John Sweeney, it felt like fate. She was young, she was successful, she was glowing, and here was a man who seemed steady. He was older, he had presence, he carried himself with confidence. He wasn't dazzled by Hollywood, and for a young actress overwhelmed by the noise of the industry, that was refreshing. John Sweeney worked as a chef at Ma Maison. It wasn't just any restaurant, it was the restaurant, playground for Hollywood elites. Jack Nicholson ate there, Al Pacino, even the studio bosses who controlled the future of actors like Dominique. Sweeney thrived in that world. He wasn't famous, but he had access to fame. He moved among the powerful with ease. And to Dominique, that was appealing. Their romance moved fast. Too fast. At first, it felt intoxicating. He showered her with affection. He called her constantly. He wanted to be around her all the time. At first, she mistook it for love. Who doesn't want to feel wanted? Who doesn't want to feel like they're someone's whole world? But love has a line. Cross it and love turns to possession. And possession can turn deadly. Within weeks, Dominique began to see signs. Sweeney wasn't just attentive. He was controlling. He wanted to know where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. If she didn't answer his calls, he grew angry. If she wanted space, he grew cold. Jealousy poisoned everything. Friends started to notice. Her once bright energy dimmed. Her laugh came less easily. She seemed trapped. One friend recalled, he would show up uninvited. He would sit outside waiting. Dominique couldn't breathe without him knowing. This wasn't love. This was obsession. Still, Dominique tried to make it work. She was young. She wanted to believe in people. She wanted to believe he could change. But Sweeney's darkness only deepened. One night, after an argument, he snapped. He grabbed her. He shook her. He left bruises. She wore turtlenecks to hide them. She told friends, "It's not as bad as it looks." But it was. It was worse. Dominique's career was rising. She had just starred in Poltergeist. She was getting offers for television movies, for roles that could cement her as more than a one-hit wonder. But Sweeney resented it. He wanted her time, all of it, and when she pulled away, he pulled harder. One night, after a brutal fight, Dominique confided in her friends. She told them she was scared. She said Sweeney's temper was unpredictable. She said he scared her, but fear wasn't enough to end it. Yet, Hollywood in the early 1980s was not kind to women in abusive relationships. Whispers of trouble at home could damage careers. Executives wanted their stars perfect, smiling, unscarred. So Dominique hid the truth. But the cracks were there. And soon the cracks would split wide open. By fall of 1982, Dominique tried to reclaim her life. She moved into her own home in West Hollywood. A small, charming place. Her sanctuary, her escape. But Sweeney wouldn't let go. He called. He begged. He threatened. He cried. She broke up with him, then took him back, then broke up again. The cycle repeated over and over. Anyone who's seen this kind of relationship knows the pattern. The victim hopes. The abuser promises. The victim forgives. And the cycle begins again. But Dominique was growing stronger. She began telling friends, "It's over. I can't do this anymore." She wanted freedom. She wanted her career. She wanted her life back. Sweeney, however, couldn't accept it. To him, losing Dominique was not an option. And that thought, that refusal, is what made him dangerous. Her friends tried to protect her. They told her to cut him off completely. They told her to stay away. But love and fear are complicated. And Dominique wasn't ready to sever the tie completely. Then came the chilling incident that would forever haunt those closest to her. One night, Sweeney locked Dominique in her own house. He wouldn't let her leave. She tried to escape. He restrained her. She was terrified. Afterward, she confided in friends. She whispered, "He could kill me one day." Those words, that fear. It wasn't exaggeration. It wasn't drama. It was prophecy. Still, she tried to move on. She accepted new acting roles. She surrounded herself with friends. She tried to believe in a future where John Sweeney was just a name from her past. But he wasn't finished. He hovered. He called. He drove past her home. He waited outside. And Dominique, this vibrant, talented young actress, felt the walls closing in. Hollywood had given her everything she dreamed of. But behind the glamour, she was living a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Because John Sweeney was not just jealous. He was not just controlling. He was dangerous. And soon, his obsession would cross the line from fear to murder. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Halloween was coming. The year was 1982. The streets of West Hollywood buzzed with energy. Actors, artists, musicians, all chasing dreams under the California night. But for Dominique Dunne, October carried something darker. She was trying to move on. She had ended things with John Sweeney for good, or at least she was trying to. On October 30th, she had plans. She was rehearsing lines with an actor friend at her home. It was supposed to be a simple evening. Work, laughter, normal life. But outside, in the shadows, John Sweeney was waiting. Neighbors saw his car, parked, engine off, lights dimmed. He was watching. He was planning. He wasn't going to let go. Inside, Dominique had no idea. She sat in her small living room, scripts scattered across the table. Her friend helped her run through dialogue. The night was quiet, safe, until the knock at the door. A sharp, heavy knock, one that made her freeze. Her friend looked at her. She looked back. Her heart sank. She knew that knock. It was Sweeney. Dominique hesitated. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Part of her feared what would happen if she didn't answer. Because when John Sweeney wanted attention, he demanded it. She opened the door, and there he was, tall, dark-haired, face tight with emotion. Neighbors later said his expression was like stone, cold, determined, like a man with a mission. He asked to speak with her. She told him no. He insisted. She tried to close the door. He pushed. The quiet evening shattered. Her friend stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Dominique stepped outside, hoping to de-escalate. Maybe she thought if she spoke to him on the porch, he would leave. Maybe she thought if she stayed calm, she could survive the night. But Sweeney wasn't calm. He wasn't reasonable. He was furious, possessed, blinded by the idea of losing her. The argument began. Voices raised. Neighbors peeked out of windows. Some would later say they thought it was just a couple fighting. Nothing unusual in Los Angeles. But this wasn't just a fight. This was the beginning of murder. Sweeney's anger boiled over. He grabbed her. He held her. She tried to pull away. He refused to let go. Her friend rushed to call for help. He dialed police. He screamed for neighbors. But by then, it was too late. In the struggle, Sweeney's hands went to her throat. He squeezed. Tighter, tighter. Dominique struggled, kicked, clawed. But his grip was iron. Her voice, her beautiful, unique voice, was silenced. The scene unfolded in chilling slow motion. Neighbors would later testify they saw it. They saw a man pinning a woman. They saw her body go limp. Someone shouted. Someone ran to stop it. But by the time they reached her, Dominique was unconscious. Sweeney stood there, breathing heavily, his hands still at her neck, his face unreadable. Then, as if waking from a trance, he stopped. Dominique's body lay still on the ground. her skin pale, her chest unmoving. The horror set in. Police were called. Sirens cut through the night. Neighbors gathered in the street, stunned, whispering. The young actress from Poltergeist had been attacked. The man who claimed to love her had nearly killed her. When officers arrived, they found John Sweeney still there. He hadn't run. He hadn't fled into the shadows. He was standing calmly, almost detached. And Dominique? She was barely alive, unconscious, her pulse faint. Paramedics worked frantically. They lifted her into the ambulance. They raced to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. Her parents were called. Her friends followed in shock. The hospital became a vigil. Doctors did everything they could. Machines breathed for her. But the damage was catastrophic. John Sweeney had strangled Dominique Dunne for minutes. Long enough to cut off oxygen. Long enough to silence her forever. Her brain was gone. Her body survived, but only because of machines. She was alive, but not living. Her parents, Dominique Dunne and Ellen Griffin, rushed to her bedside. Her brother, Griffin Dunne, the actor, stood shattered. They looked at her face still, her spirit gone. The doctors told them the truth. There was no hope. She would never wake up. The family was crushed. Hollywood friends visited in tears. Natalie Wood had just died months earlier. Now another young starlet was gone. Felt like a curse. 5 days after the attack, Dominique's parents faced the hardest decision of their lives. They removed her from life support. She was 22, just at the beginning, just starting to live her dream. Gone. And John Sweeney? He was arrested that night, charged with murder, taken away in handcuffs while Dominique lay dying. But this was only the beginning, because the trial that followed would shock Hollywood, would devastate her family, and would leave the public furious. What happened in that courtroom became just as infamous as the crime itself. Justice was not guaranteed. Not in Hollywood. Not in 1982. The Dunne family wanted justice. The public wanted justice. But John Sweeney's defense would twist the story. They would paint him not as a murderer, but as a man who simply lost control. And that legal battle between truth and manipulation would change the way America viewed domestic violence forever. Dominique's life ended on that October night. But the fight for justice was only beginning. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every bench. Photographers stood outside, cameras ready. Hollywood was watching. America was watching. Because this wasn't just a murder trial. It was a story of love turned into obsession. A young star killed at the height of her promise. And a man who claimed he never meant to kill her. The defendant was John Sweeney, her ex-boyfriend, her killer, the man who strangled Dominique Dunne until her brain shut down. The charge? Second-degree murder. The stakes? Justice for Dominique. Justice for her family. And a verdict that could change how the courts handled domestic violence. But the trial would not go the way anyone expected. From the very start, Sweeney's lawyers had a plan. They weren't going to deny what happened. They couldn't. Too many witnesses. Too much evidence. So they shaped the story. They didn't call him a killer. They called him a man in love. A man who lost control. A man who acted in passion, not premeditation. They painted Dominique as someone who pushed his buttons. They argued that he didn't plan to murder her. That he snapped. That it was heat of the moment. The jury listened. And already, the Dunne family could see where this was heading. The prosecution told a different story. They brought up Dominique's friends. Her neighbors. People who had seen the abuse. One friend recalled the bruises. Another recalled her fear. Neighbors spoke of screaming, of fights that shook the walls. They told the jury, this wasn't sudden. This wasn't passion. This was a pattern. This was control. This was abuse that ended in murder. But the judge made choices that would change everything. Judge Burton Katz presided over the trial. At first, many thought he would be fair. But soon, the Dunne family realized something was wrong. Evidence of Sweeney's violent past? Excluded. Testimonies about his abuse of Dominique? Limited. The jury never heard the full truth. They never heard about his temper with past girlfriends. They never saw the full pattern of his rage. It was as if the judge put blinders on them, as if the court itself was protecting Sweeney. And the Dunne family sat in the gallery helpless. Dominique's father, Dominique Dunne, later said it felt like she was murdered twice. Once by Sweeney, once by the system. Every day in court, the family watched. They saw Sweeney sit there, calm, clean-cut, well-dressed. They listened as his lawyers called him a man misunderstood. They watched the jury nod. They watched sympathy grow where there should have been outrage. Dominique Dunne kept a journal. In it, he wrote about the anger boiling inside him. How could this happen? How could the truth be hidden? How could his daughter's voice be silenced again? Her mother sat silent in court, tears streaking her face. Her brother Griffin clenched his fists. The family was united in grief, but powerless in justice. The trial dragged on, day after day, witness after witness, argument after argument. And then it ended. The jury deliberated. The courtroom grew tense. When they returned, the world held its breath. John Sweeney was found guilty, but not of murder, not of second-degree murder, not even of voluntary manslaughter. The jury convicted him of voluntary manslaughter and misdemeanor assault. The maximum sentence? 6.5 years. 6.5 years. For taking the life of a 22-year-old woman. For ending a career. For destroying a family. In the end, he served less than that. Just under 3 years in prison. 3 years for murder. The courtroom gasped. The Dunne family broke. The public raged. It was a slap in the face. A betrayal. A message that domestic violence was not taken seriously. The verdict spread across newspapers. Headlines screamed injustice. How could this happen? Hollywood starlet's killer walks free. Talk shows debated it. Activists marched. Women spoke out. This case was bigger than Dominique now. It was about every woman who had been ignored. Every woman who had been abused and silenced. Every woman who feared the system would not protect her. The Dominique Dunne tragedy became a symbol, a reminder of what happens when the courts fail. Hollywood itself was shaken. Actors, directors, producers, many spoke out. Some had known Dominique personally. Others saw themselves in her story. Here was a young woman, talented and full of potential, and yet she was reduced to a headline. Her killer reduced to a misguided lover. It was the kind of injustice Hollywood loved to dramatize on screen. But this time it was real, and no one could change the ending. Dominique Dunne, Dominique's father, refused to stay silent. He channeled his grief into writing, into storytelling, into exposing the failures of the justice system. He became a voice for victims, a man determined to shine light on corruption, privilege, and injustice in courtrooms. His career shifted, from Hollywood producer to crime journalist. He wrote, he spoke, he made sure Dominique's story would never be forgotten. In many ways, her death defined his life's work, and through him, her voice lived on. And what about John Sweeney, the man who strangled Dominique, the man who stole her future? After prison, he tried to rebuild his life. He moved away. He worked as a chef again. He remarried. He lived quietly, as if nothing had happened. But the shadow of Dominique followed him. People remembered, people whispered, and he could never fully escape what he had done. The Dunne family never forgave him. They never forgot. They never stopped reminding the world of who he was. The Dominique Dunne case did not end in justice, but it did spark change. It forced conversations about domestic violence. It forced lawmakers to rethink sentencing. It forced the public to see the dangers of ignoring abuse. Dominique's name became more than a tragedy. It became a rallying cry. Her life ended too soon. Her killer served almost no time. But her story still echoes. And for those who loved her, the wound never healed. The trial that stunned Hollywood was not just about a verdict. It was about a system that failed. A reminder that justice is not always given. And that truth still haunts the Dunne family to this day. The trial was over, The gavel had fallen, but justice never came. For Dominique Dunne's family, the nightmare didn't end with the verdict. It only deepened, because her killer would walk free in just a few years, and Dominique would never walk anywhere again. Dominique's death left a hole in Hollywood. She was only 22. Her career had just begun. Friends said she could have been the next big star. Her performance in Poltergeist had already made her unforgettable. Directors wanted her. Audiences loved her. The future was hers. And then, it was gone. One moment of violence. One man's obsession. One system's failure. Her name became a headline. Her face a reminder of what was stolen. For her family, life was never the same. Her mother, Ellen, carried sorrow in her eyes. Her brother, Griffin, found himself haunted. He was an actor too, but every script, every role carried a shadow. And her father, Dominic, he was changed forever. Dominique Dunne had once lived in the world of glamour. Parties, Hollywood premieres, high society. But after Dominique's death, he left that behind. He turned to writing. He turned to truth. He wrote about the trial, about the injustice, about how the system had betrayed his daughter. His pain became his weapon. His grief became his purpose. Dominique began writing for Vanity Fair. His words were sharp, unflinching. He exposed the cracks in the legal system. He wrote about privilege, power, and corruption. People listened. People trusted him. Because he wasn't just a journalist. He was a father who had seen justice denied. Every story he told carried Dominique's spirit. Every article was a reminder of her. He covered the trials of the rich and famous. He gave victims a voice. And slowly, he became one of the most respected crime writers in America. All because of a daughter stolen too soon. While Dominique carried his daughter's legacy, John Sweeney carried nothing. He served just under 3 years. Then he was free. He changed jobs. He moved states. He remarried. He started a new life. But wherever he went, whispers followed. People knew who he was. People knew what he had done. And the Dunne family, they never let him forget. Dominique once said, "We were given a life sentence." He served 3 years. It was the cruelest truth of all. Hollywood, too, could not forget Dominique. Her friends held vigils. Directors spoke about her talent. Fans wrote letters to her family. Her performance in Poltergeist became her lasting memory. Whenever people watched it, they thought of her. A young woman, so full of promise, forever frozen in time. Her co-stars mourned her. Her absence lingered on every set she never reached. She was a reminder of how quickly life could vanish. But Dominique's story did more than grieve Hollywood. It woke people up. Domestic violence, once hidden in silence, was dragged into the light. People asked hard questions. How could the court minimize abuse? How could a killer serve so little time? How many more women were suffering in silence? Advocates used Dominique's name. They used her story. They pushed for tougher laws, for better sentencing, for victims to be heard. Dominique became more than a tragedy. She became a warning, a symbol, a voice for those who had none. For the rest of his life, Dominique Dunne carried his daughter with him. To trials, in courtrooms, on television. He was relentless. He would not let the world forget her. He would not let the system hide its failures. And though he died in 2009, his work lives on. His books, his articles, his legacy, all tied to Dominique. All tied to the love of a father who refused silence. What would Dominique have become? Would she have won awards? Would she have become a star like Meryl Streep, or Jodie Foster, or Michelle Pfeiffer? Would she have left her mark on cinema forever? The truth is, we'll never know. Her life was stolen, her voice silenced, her story unfinished. And that is the deepest tragedy of all. Today, decades later, people still remember Dominique Dunne. Her case is studied in law schools. Her story is told in documentaries. Her name is whispered whenever justice fails another woman. Because her story is not just hers. It belongs to every victim who was ignored, every survivor who was silenced, every family who buried a daughter too soon. Dominique's story forces us to face an uncomfortable truth, that sometimes the law protects the wrong people, that sometimes justice is not justice at all. Dominique Dunne's story began as a Hollywood dream. It ended as a Hollywood nightmare. But even in death, she changed the world. She gave voice to the voiceless. She forced people to see what they wanted to ignore. Her killer may have walked free, but Dominique's name still echoes, louder than ever. She was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, an actress, a woman with a future that should have been. Her legacy is not just in what she lost. It's in what we learned. It's in the fire her family carried forward. It's in the fight against silence. And as long as her story is told, she will never be forgotten. Picture her, young, radiant, a smile that lit up a room, a voice that could command a screen. Dominique Dunne, a name that should have been in lights, instead carved on a gravestone. But even there, she shines. Even there, she speaks. Even there, she reminds us, justice denied is not justice forgotten. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.